the second meeting of the Charter Revision Commission. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Irene and Michelle, for our wonderful and complete packets. So I see here there's an oath of office. Are we taking a second one?
No, that's last.
Oh, that was last week. I apologize. Where is my, where are my meetings? Where's my minutes?
The
Oh,
agenda.
here's the 29th. Okay, all right. So let's restart this. Can we restart this?
Well, it's already started.
Okay, I am going to personally replay my last minute and a half. Today is Monday, April 29th, 2024, 2 p.m. Charter Review Commission. I call it to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Root,
I am here.
Mr. Kolianis,
Yes.
Dr. Bukavalis,
Yes,
Ms. Jennings,
here.
Mr. Kuskudis. Maybe still trying to get up here. No, there he is.
There he is.
There he is.
Mr. Kuskudis is present.
Mr. Kuskudis?
Mr. Seaman, I believe, is absent. And Mr. Terrapini.
Here.
Thank you very much. All right, everybody, can you please make sure your mics are on and your cell phones are off? And I should do the same.
What's up, Ray? Could find a place to park.
Okay, in front of you, you have a copy of the minutes from our first meeting last week. I'd like a motion to approve these minutes as written.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion about it? Roll call?
Dr. Bukavalis,
Yes.
Ms. Jennings,
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis,
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini,
Yes.
Mr. Kolianis,
Yes.
Dr. Root.
Yes. Okay, that business taken care of. Okay, our second agenda item is, do we have, are we going to do public comments at this point, or are we not doing that on our agenda?
We do have normal public comments are at the end, but this would be if there's any public present that wants to suggest any charter changes.
Okay, is
We
there
do that.
anyone here from the public who would like to make suggestions to the charter? And there is no one. Okay. Agenda item 3, let's talk about how we are going to invite the Board of Commissioners, charter officials, and department heads. Ms. Jacobs, would you please start?
So before y'all discuss that, I just wanted to point out on your dais, there's an amended calendar, and I thank everyone for getting me those dates that they were not available or out of town. I put in all the meeting dates, and I listed when I knew members were going to be missing from a meeting. And I also wanted to point out May 27th is Memorial Day, and that falls on a Monday, so we've rescheduled that meeting for May 29th. And also, there was, September 2nd is Labor Day, and that is the day before y'all make the presentation to the Board of Commissioners. So the week before, we have a meeting on Monday, August 26th. We could either start that meeting earlier if we need it, or we can also, I have tentatively on hold August 27th, which is Tuesday, in addition to that 26th meeting that we would be able to schedule. And I know y'all are going to be discussing how would you like to interview the charter officials, the BOC, department heads, and so forth. However, I did want to let you know that a press release has gone out to the public, notifying them of your meeting dates and how, if they can't be in attendance, they would be able to email those suggestions to myself, and then I would be able to forward them bring them forth to the board. Also, I have spoken with the mayor and the vice mayor. Of course, the mayor will be going out of town for a sister city signing. So they will be scheduled for May 29th, both the mayor and vice mayor, on that meeting date for the interview. I am still working as far as the other commissioners. Hopefully, we can get them sooner, but if not, I will try my best to get them scheduled to come forward. And I believe that's all I have. And that's all I have at this time. And then y'all can.
Thank you. So one of my personal thoughts are that the earlier that the commissioners can get in, the more influential their comments are going to be.
I have a suggestion. Since we're going to be here scheduled on Mondays, then do we just do just an open invite and let them fill in the date, what Monday they plan on being here? And that way we could put it on our calendar.
I would like to have them scheduled so
Yeah.
we know when they're
Yeah,
going to
so-
be here.
So,
As opposed to drop in.
well, no, an open invite so they could get on the schedule, is what I'm
Oh,
saying.
yes, yeah.
Okay, and then their failure to not come is their failure to not have any input, so, that would just be my recommendation, and if the board would like to give them, let's say, till the end of a certain month to, come and provide their comments, otherwise it would be closed. It kind of puts them on the hot seat to get it done. That's just my thoughts.
I like those thoughts. Anybody else have suggestions? Ideas?
Yeah, I think that
John, can you go
Sched-
into your mic? I can't
they
hear
should
you.
They should definitely be scheduled. And you and Jim did it the last time, so to me, it would be most productive if they sent ahead of time specific areas of concern so that we could review that in the charter, or think about if it's not in the charter and it's something they want in the charter, that we can evaluate it, maybe talk to Mr. Salzman ahead of time, or other resources that the committee might have. But, I mean, that's just me, that it would be helpful to, just an outline of what they're want. I mean, they don't have to write a thesis or something, but, a few paragraphs of what their areas of concern are, if maybe they don't have areas of concern.
It's always good to have something in writing to work from, but I would not want to make a barrier to them coming and talking to us. So,
Suggestion or request, but yes.
I have a question. In the past, has it been done this way, or simply invited them, and then
That's
are
what
they
I-
invited back?
That's
Maybe
what I
to
was
discuss?
asking Jim and Carrie.
do you want to speak on last time?
Irene and Michelle took care of it the last time. It's a matter of calling them, and they're like our husbands and wives at home. Sometimes you have to tell them what's coming on, and they will come. And we also had city manager and a couple of department heads, the financial people. And my opinion would be, it'd be great if we could do all those up front and then get into the charter. Because when they have a problem, we're going to be writing it down, and so will they. And then when we get to that part in the charter, we can handle it, having heard from them and their reasons and stuff. It's easier and smoother, I think, if we lead the horse to the water.
And are they ever invited back to discuss?
They can
They
come,
can.
they can come tomorrow if they want. It's the only ones that we can say no to.
I'm speaking for the commission, I'll speak for myself. I think it's really important to hear from all of the charter officials and any department heads that want to be here. We do have a schedule that we will work to. If they are not able to meet that schedule, we will try to accommodate them according to what their schedule is. We did have at the last one commissioner who did not show up, did not make time for us, and that I think became an issue when we were briefing the commission. And so I'm very motivated to not have that happen again. So, and the problem is if we hold up starting because they don't want to come in early, then we don't have anything to discuss. And I had asked Ms. Jacobs to please get whoever scheduled early on the agenda that we can, and she got pushback that they couldn't come as early as we would have liked to have seen them because, they want to do their preparation as well. So right now, we have the mayor and the vice mayor a month from now, and that's all that is scheduled at this point.
I just wanted to clarify, I have not gone to the commissioners yet. I wanted to, after, hearing from the mayor and the vice mayor that they would like a little bit longer to get their stuff together. That's why I wanted to bring it back before y'all to see,
May I? I would probably put a cutoff date, and if you want to say the end of June, that's plenty of time. They have the calendar. They'll know that they could come on a Monday, unless that's too long. But as far as, between and that goes through the department heads as well. They have the calendar. They could just give you a call or however they do it. Say, okay, I'd like to make my presentation on the, a week from today. And that way you fill up the calendar. And do we limit one, or we could have multiple on any given day. So that was just my suggestion, but I would have a deadline, because that way, after that date, it gives the onus on us to start putting everything together with everybody's suggestions.
Right, if we're briefing the commissioners, basically, we don't have September, so we have to be done by end of August. And so if we're looking at the schedule, I think having a cutoff makes sense, unless somebody can't make it. We still really want to have their feedback.
We do try to schedule them as soon as possible, including department heads. We usually have a letter that goes out to the city manager asking if any department heads first have anything to come forward to. That's one thing. If you have a section that you're working on, and if that department head hasn't come forward with any changes, if you are making changes to that section, you might call them back. There's been times when that has happened, then that we would be able to schedule them for that. But we do try to do all the interviews or anyone who has any changes as soon as possible, because like you said, by even the end of August is a little too late, because by that time, we're already formalizing those things for the commission presentation.
Irene, when is the Sister Cities trip?
That is from May 11th to May 21st.
They will be where?
They'll be in Hanya, Egina, and then Hanya.
Okay, so, that's legitimate, but Ms. Carey, maybe we should look at this as in terms of.
Can you speak into your mic, please? I'm hard of hearing, and it really helps me, John, thanks.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Maybe we should look at this in terms of a little bit of a hierarchy as the charter goes. There's the elected officials, then there's the charter officials. So I think if we emphasize that we want to do the elected officials and charter officials and then department heads, like Mr. Salzman is a charter official, and Irene and the auditor and the city manager clearly is going down the line the most important people as far as input that I would look for. Clearly, the
No.
elected officials first, but then work down the chart.
I agree. We are reliant on having those individuals scheduled for us. And I'd say, I would be happy to have one scheduled every hour from 2 to 5 o'clock.
Right.
From here on out, for the next 4 weeks, so we can get all their inputs and then get into it. I don't think that's going to be reasonable. Rather, it's not reasonable. I don't know that we'll be successful at that, but we can ask, and then we go with the flow. And if, for example, there are sections of the charter we can work on without necessarily having any disruption going forward, because they're less likely to be changed or impacted. And it might be that, it's not time lost if we go as an organization, as our commission, through the charter, because we might wind up having our own questions that we can have answered when that official comes in. So I put forward to ask for, let's get as many in here as we can early on so they can influence us, provide their insights to our discussions. I will ask again to make sure everyone has read the charter. It's short, it's 20 pages. So you see the content that's in there. After we finish this discussion, I thought I would go ahead right to section 34 and review it so we all understand what our role is and what the process is, because it's in there, and then we'll start from there. But having the opportunities to talk to the charter the charter officials first is great, if it can be done. Following that with department heads is great. Elected officials, and then department heads, and then, any other individuals with public comment can come in really at any time. If they want to have time scheduled, I would suggest that they actually schedule it with you, unless they are happy to have a 4-minute section at the end of the meeting. And I will request that. Does that satisfy?
I think Irene, if you ask the elected officials, like, for the next meeting, see who you can get
Yeah.
give them an hour, right? Carrie, is that what you're saying? Give them an hour each?
Well,
And,
we give them however much time they need. We will notionally say an hour for
okay, so, and
scheduling purposes.
if you can't say, like, next meeting, get some of the elected officials, then get Mark or the auditor or somebody, and, fill in as it goes.
That was my plan,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
just that
fine.
we couldn't have the mayor here today and the vice mayor start with that seniority.
Sounds good.
Appreciate that you went out and started that process. And so, let me summarize. We would like to have everyone in as soon as possible. Is that a thought that is consistent with everyone on the board's thoughts? Yes, I see nods around. Yes, sooner the better. Do we want to talk about Michael's deadline? Maybe instead of saying deadline, just put our request out that we would like to have all the charter officials, or rather, all of the charter officials, the elected officials, and the city department heads who want to talk to us scheduled by the 10th of June, if at all possible. I see you're on.
I have no, I'm not trying to create a deadline, I'm just trying to put the onus that there's gotta be a time that, either time to get off the pot or not, and
Yeah.
it should be, because this is such an important document, giving us opportunity to do what we have to do. You don't want somebody scheduling in the middle of July.
Was it the 10th of June or the end of June?
I just put out the 10th of June because I see Mr. Kuskudis is away the next 2 Mondays.
Okay, I'm good with the 10th. I'm good with the 10th.
Yeah, so it's request them to be scheduled by then. If that doesn't happen, then we deal with it. because we want everybody to have a voice, but we would like to get them in sooner rather than later. Are we in agreement with that statement?
No problem.
Can I add
Yes,
one thing? I have a little concern about asking department heads to come, because the department heads could come in here and give us a story that they've already covered with their boss, who said, no, we can't do that. So if we think it's a great idea, we're gonna do what we can. We're creating a real problem for the city manager. Normally, the city manager comes, the 3 charter officials, 4 charter officials, the directors come, because that's the lot that runs a city. I don't want to put a department head
so
in a bad
did I misspeak using the term department head as opposed to director?
Yes.
So you're talking
didn't miss-
fire and police chief? Are those
Yeah.
directors you're talking about? Are there any
I'm
others?
talking about, there's a public works director, there's 3 or 4.
Okay.
And that usually, we do an invite to the city manager who's over those directors or
Okay.
department heads. And then he would advise me who has responded to him to come, who has something to come before this commission.
Okay, that works good.
Yes, I agree with that. Are we all right with
Yeah,
that?
I just didn't want
Yes.
to foreclose a department director from having some significant ideas or input.
Right.
To be foreclosed on that,
The
so.
directors are,
So in the
Have to go.
past, it hasn't been department heads?
Whoever's in charge of that department and has anything, it goes, the invite goes to the city manager, because we don't, not all departments have titled directors. Some are department heads. He puts that out to his employees, and whoever has anything would come back and we would schedule that for the agenda. Mostly it's gonna be like planning and zoning, procurement, those that have stuff in the charter. Sometimes it might be someone has an idea or a suggestion for the Charter Revision Commission that, and he does allow them to come forward.
Yes, because I'd certainly like to hear them if they want to come forward, if they do come forward.
Carrie, will you need a motion in a second for this?
I don't know that that's
okay.
necessary.
No, it's just.
This
No,
is,
okay.
these are requests,
Right.
so.
Got it.
All right, so timing is of the essence. I think we understand now that I misused term department head to indicate directors. So we respect the position of city manager. He is responsible for those individuals. He will bring forward those who have ideas and comments for us to consider. But let's try to get it done, and let's ask them to try to schedule it between now and the 10th of June, if at all possible. Okay? Do we need to do anything else with that? You know what we'd like to see here. Okay, very good. All right. So our next agenda item is start with a review and discussion of charter sections. I would like to start with a reading of section 34, which talks about this commission and what we do. Is there any issues with that? No, okay. Okay. The section that covers the Charter Revision Commission is on section 32 amendments. It says this charter may be amended as provided by section 166.031 Florida statutes. The Board of Commissioners shall appoint a Charter Revision Commission at least every 5 years to review the provisions hereof and to recommend any changes in this charter. By request of the Board of Commissioners, the most recent Charter Revision Commission shall be reconvened in order to render an advisory opinion regarding any interpretation of this charter. Okay. I don't believe either of you have been on a charter review commission before. Mr. Kuskudis,
No, I
have
have not,
you? Mr. Tanner Panna, you have, right? And you are our longest tooth in that regards.
I tell you.
All right, so the bottom line is, we are here to do our job this summer, to put forward recommendations as we believe they should be made. However, once this goes to a vote, et cetera, the bottom line is, our job, while we are not meeting regularly anymore, the board can call us back if they have a question on a charter paragraph or the implementation or whatever. They can call us back to render an opinion on it as an advisory role. So the bottom line is, this board's not replaced for 5 years. So in essence, you're on call for that period of time, as long as you continue to live within the city and meet the other requirements of being a charter revision commission person. Irene, did I get that right? Is that correct?
yes.
Mr. Salzman, is that the proper reading? Okay. So I just wanted you to know that it's more than just this summer. I will also say that we did not get called back in the last 5 years. Have you ever been called back to render an opinion to your best of your knowledge?
The only time they've called a group back.
Yeah, so anyway, it's written in there that they can. We are, it is part of our responsibilities, and I just wanted to point that out.
I think, excuse me.
Yes.
I think part of the rationale for what they're saying is that if something came up, they may want to call us back and say, we think this is better than what's in there because times have changed, and what do you think? And if we agree, it still goes back to the public. But they're using our expertise to run something new by us. So it's the only way to go, really. I think what you're saying is absolutely right on the dollar.
Okay. I'm going to read the next section now. Such commission shall be composed of 7 members, and the affirmative vote of 4 such members shall be required to propose any change to this charter. So that means if 4 of us are missing, we cannot have an effective meeting because we cannot vote on anything. Am I interpreting that correctly?
We wouldn't even hold the meeting.
That's what I'm meaning, and that's one of the reasons why we had asked for schedules. Okay, such commission shall receive comment from the Board of Commissioners, charter officials, and the public, and then transmit proposed charter amendments in ordinance form to the Board of Commissioners for further comment. And this is the fascinating part. We will consider changes. If we are in agreement and we vote to make changes, then it goes to the city attorney or their representative to write it up in ordinance form, which is the short language, right? 75 words and a 15-word title, or 25-word title or something like that? Or do you do the
No, we do
longer
the
one
ordinance,
first?
which would include, the answer is yes and no.
Okay.
We would do an ordinance that would include the language, the 75 words that you want in there, but the ordinance itself is much larger.
It is longer, okay. So what happens is that our comments get written up, and I believe in that you have the why the change is being made, correct?
But we usually put that in the whereas.
The whereas, right. And then there's a 75-word summary that goes out to the public, correct? And then there's a title for it, which is
That would
even-
be the resolution. So in the ordinance would be longer and explain the whys and what you're doing. Then it would come back once it's all approved, and, it would come back to by resolution calling for the ballot language, and that's where you're gonna have the ballot language will have the questions itself. That has 15 words for the title and 75 words for the actual question. Now, prior to that, while you're working on that ordinance in final form, you're at the same time prior to the ballots or anything coming out, that's when the board we would put together a facts of each question you have, that we would distribute in the water bills to the public. One, that they know an election and the facts about the questions.
And thank you very much. So that's one of the reasons why by the time we get into August, we're starting to review a lot more material. And so that's why we really would like to get these officials in and talking to us, because we're going to be going fairly quickly through this. The pace will depend on the material. And we will be coming back to revisit it at several different times as we review the attorney's writings and the questions and that sort of thing. So just, it's not a one-time through, but the more agreement we can come up with early on, especially, you know, it gets disheartening to spend a lot of time and then have to keep going back and changing. That's, that was the point I wanted to make.
Carrie, may I ask Irene a question? Irene, you said that all of this goes out with the water bills. I live in a condo complex. I don't get a water bill.
Well, the majority, we'll do a mailer. It'll probably be, there'll probably be other ways as well. We'll post it online and to make sure the public has some knowledge of the election and the questions.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, so it will go I think you said it was at the 3rd of September to the Board of Commissioners?
The first presentation to the board is the 3rd of September.
September,
And
and
that
that-
gives, that's like basically considered like a kind of a draft. And they'll
Right.
have 30 days to comment back to the board before your first reading, which has to go verbatim.
Right, and that is an ordinance form by the time it gets to being presented to the board the first time, correct?
You can do it either way, but yes.
So
It wouldn't be the reading, it would just be
The
what you're
discussion,
presenting.
right. But they need to have information that supports what we're presenting. So I would assume that for the most part, it would be whatever version of maturity our ordinance statements are for the changes, correct? Yeah, at that point. Then the Board of Commissioners shall, within 30 days, return the proposed amendments to the Charter Review Commission with its recommended proposals. So at that point, the Board of Commissioners does not necessarily have to agree with what we have put forward. And they can come back with something different. Our goal is to have a coherent story. That's why we want to understand all points of view before we go forward to make our recommendations. However, you know, that may or may not happen. After review thereof, the Charter Review Commission shall make its own final report to the Board of Commissioners in ordinance form, which shall be adopted verbatim by the Board of Commissioners. Okay, and that means that they may give us differing opinions back, but if we believe we strongly recommend that we go forward with a change, even if we don't have the Board of Commissioners' support, we can do that. The Board of Commissioners shall, within 120 days of such final report, hold an election on the recommended proposal, and this is by the citizens of Tarpon Springs. In the same election, the Board of Commissioners may sponsor its own proposals, including public initiative proposals. So in other words, if they are not in agreement, they can put their own proposed change in. And then it's up to our voters to decide which way the city is going to go. The referendum summary shall advise the public as to whether the proposal is sponsored by the Charter Review Commission, by the Board of Commissioners, or by public initiative. In the event of any conflict among proposals, the proposal receiving the greatest number of affirmative votes shall prevail to the extent of such conflict. So that's what we are doing. We are going to review the charter. We are going to hear from a lot of people. We're going to do the best we can. We've got a great representation from the city, and we have great history here on why the charter is written the way it is. And that's what we're going to do. Are there any questions?
I would just like to revisit Joan's comments that she doesn't get a water bill.
I don't either. It's a
Okay,
problem.
so notice is of great importance on this, these charter changes. I mean, the charter is sort of like the Constitution for the city. So it seems like that we should take a minute and focus on what the greatest penetration on notice would be. And I can tell you that it's not posting it online, because lots of people don't get water bills, lots of people don't look at post online. I mean, to me, the most adequate is a direct mailer to each household that has a registered voter. And forget the water bills.
You know, I know that if we have, for example, when we have elections and we have a change in poll place, we have to do one per household mailing. I know they're extremely costly. I know, I was just saying, for one example, you know, off the top of my head without looking back, it's been 5 years and we have many boards we assist. So that was just one thing that I said through, but I know that in the past, we've tried everything, and maybe Mr. Do you remember everything we had, Mr. Colianis? I don't know if there's anything else that you could remember that we did, but I know we try to reach as many residents as possible.
John makes a great point, and what you're saying is basically what we've done. And unfortunately, when you're running for office, you have to buy a list of people who vote in the city. And you can even get it fine printed where it tells you who voted in the last 2 elections. But that info's out there, and it is expensive. And I know for you guys, it's going to be a hell of a job to do to get all of that out at the right time and in the mail and stuffed and what have you. But I'm sure when Mark comes in here,
Services, there are services that do that also.
yeah, there's a way to do it. And so you don't have to do the hard work. Mark's just got to come up with some money. And I'm sure he will. We explained it to him that it was something we haven't done in the past, but something we want to do now.
And we can get a list together of all the means that we use now for various things as well.
Yeah.
I just don't
think
have
it's
those at the top
possible.
of my head.
Yeah, it's possible. It can work.
So I recorded that question, how to reach voters who don't receive water bills. So I have that for the city manager for when he comes and talks to us, so we can revisit that at that point. And of course, the city clerk can take that back to him in the short term.
I'd like to
yes.
go back to your section 32. The last sentence, when it talks about the greatest number of affirmative votes from who? The electorate?
Yes.
Then why can we put the language in, they call it the electorate, affirmative votes of the electorate?
Oh, it's a good suggestion. We're not reviewing that section right now,
Okay.
So Mike,
but I'll make a note, because that's a
the
good.
sentence
good
above
idea.
that refers to the referendum.
I know that, but you talk about the different, the commissioners, public initiative, the board, just to be, clear. Sometimes you add one word, and it just makes it clear that you're talking about the affirmative votes of the electorate. And that, I think it gives more,
No words.
Agreed. Yeah, it's more.
more words, yeah, one more word.
And so that's a great example of the discussion that we will have when we get to this next section, and then we would vote upon it. I would ask Irene for a roll call after it was motion second and
All right.
discussed.
I thought we were on that section, but
No, I just went out of order to read it, so we understood what we were,
Gotcha.
what our job was.
I put a
That's-
note.
I did too, so I captured it, just in case.
All right.
Okay, so with that, any other questions about our job and what we're here to do? No? All right, well, then let's start on the first section.
You didn't mention anything about pay.
What's that?
You didn't mention anything about pay.
Oh, I'm sorry. How much are we getting paid to do this stuff? We're getting paid in goodwill.
And goodwill.
You'll have to add that to the charter.
We can.
Put anything we want in. I don't know that it would get approved.
We can vote an increase for Irene and Michelle. That would be a no-brainer.
Actually, that's, budgeting is, that's actually not part of our review here, because that's part of the budgeting process, that we talk about the budgeting process, but we don't get into that level of detail. So I just make that distinction. All right, so Irene has a note here, as we go and start working on sections, we don't have any votes required until we're going to finalize the section. So I'm going to use a very modified Robert's rules. In other words, we'll read the section, or we'll read a subset of the section, depending on how long it is. We'll have open discussion. We'll identify any changes that need to be made, and then we move on from there. Is that acceptable? Okay, all right. Section 1. Do I need to read this?
No.
No, okay. So it has to do with the creation of the boundaries. Have the boundaries of the city changed at all? And I did see that in the municipal, is it the one in the municipal code that had Appendix A was all the geographic boundary specifications? And is that current, or do we need to consider amendments to that, or is that done through other ordinance changes?
Everything that's in Appendix A is every time there's an
Annexation.
ordinance for an annexation into the city limits, that section, that Appendix A would get updated with the meets and bounds.
So in other words, Appendix A is not considered part of our purview for reviewing,
That is correct.
even though
The-
it's cited within the charter document?
If you see Appendix A,
Yes.
Right, that is correct. You want to have something that can change without having to go to referendum every time. So that's why Appendix A is referenced, but Appendix A is something that can be changed without having to come back to you.
Okay.
And it's usually the legal description of that property that was annexed in.
Right.
I made the mistake of printing out Appendix A.
Yeah, I got to that, and I'm like, I don't have that much paper in my
So
printer.
I made the mistake of printing it out, so.
Well, it's good. Keep it handy. You
Yeah,
never
I'll-
know.
Yeah. So,
Mr. Terrapini, you have a comment?
Well, as long as we're talking about geographical areas, I just have a question for the city attorney, which is having to do with annexations, voluntary or involuntary. I know there was some state statutes changed.
Right.
Because the Tarpon has a lot of enclaves. So how can enclaves be addressed if you wanted to? Is there an involuntary?
Annexation?
Yeah.
You can do involuntary annexation, but that's rare. I mean,
Rare,
because of the procedure and the costs associated with it. Mostly they're voluntary. We'll see the de-annexation issue more than anything. Usually annexation is it's a voluntary thing, and everybody wants to come in for the city services. But we would see more of the de-annexation than anything.
Just for the record, how does an involuntary annexation work?
It's basically a taking action, going before the courts and showing the justification for the city, assuming those property. And there's a set of criteria. I mean, I can give you a more detailed summary.
That's all right. It's not easy, that's good.
Well,
Well,
I asked the question because Appendix A was called out in our charter documents, as well as and it's probably a question for one of the directors of the city manager, there's I see we do a lot of services for the unincorporated part of Tarpon Springs
I
versus
was wondering about
the
it.
incorporated, and what is that relationship? But that's probably better left.
I'm sorry, some of those are just subject to agreement. You know, the unincorporated area, especially when you're going down Keystone, that area. And there's been voluntary attempts for annexation in some of those areas.
Also, if somebody wants to utilize city services at this point, they're required to do an annexation, a petition to annex is a requirement.
If they, right, but their problem is when you're the third property in. and
No, I know,
first
if
in,
they're,
right,
yeah,
right.
not to create, but
the
if
problem.
you're the border,
Right.
if you border the city limit and you need water or sewer, and you're getting it from the city, it's a requirement that you petition for annexation.
But those are voluntary annexation, because they want that. They're voluntarily coming into the city. Under the understanding they have to.
They have to.
Yes, they have to, but it's still the voluntary request versus involuntary.
Okay. So does anyone have concerns with the way this paragraph or section is written?
I just find it extremely odd that it refers to Appendix A of the charter. Our role is to review the charter, and yet we don't have Appendix A here.
Here,
and
pass it
aren't-
down.
Well,
Legal descriptions.
Yeah, that's all Appendix A is, so it describes
Right,
where
it-
the boundaries are.
And if you really were going to review it, all we would have is somebody come in and tell you those are the legal descriptions, right?
So
That's the only way
You could have it.
That's okay. I don't need more
Okay,
paper.
yeah, there's nothing being hidden here. It's
No,
just-
no, it just seems odd.
You would need an engineer's ruler and a surveyor and
Surveyor, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
try to make out.
Okay, so
You'll definitely increase the cost.
are there any concerns with how this section is written?
I move that we accept section 1 as presented.
If we vote on it, are we able to come back to it?
I'm sure, because
You absolutely can always come back to any section.
I'll second that then.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Jacobs, may we have a roll call?
Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. Dr. Gavalas,
Yes.
Ms. Jennings,
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis.
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini,
Yes?
Mr. Kolianis,
Yes.
Dr. Root.
Yes.
And Chair, if I could just make a comment. One of the reasons why you have that ability to go back is because you are going to be hearing from different charter officers and different individuals on suggestions, and you may trigger something that you want to go back to and change. So you always have that ability. Otherwise, we
Thank
would
you.
really be in trouble if people come late and you've already gone through those sections.
Agree. Since this is city property, I am going to make a note that we had questions on Appendix A. With the clarification that we do not review that. And we had a question on voluntary versus involuntary annexation. And with the result, no change to section. Was there anything I missed here? Okay, moving on. Wow. We're,
Another biggie.
yeah, flying here. All right, section 2, powers.
I just, for council, a question, if The language that's here, that's statutory, is that pretty much what the Florida statute,
I don't think so.
It's not verbatim statutory, I do not believe.
No. This is local stuff.
well, I know that, but certain, like, certain powers granted to municipalities
That is correct.
are per statute.
Yes, the general, yes, you are correct.
The timeframes and things, though, can be modified to fit the community.
Yeah, but there's no time frame on here. It just says this is.
What are you looking at? I'm looking at municipal.
Powers,
Powers under section
two.
Oh, you're at 2. I was looking at limitation of powers.
Well, the other thing about this is that, as you know, home rule is being taken away. Almost every session, they're taking more and more responsibilities or abilities from you. So this is obviously subject to those,
Except as provided by law.
right, which changes.
So I guess
This would be the general language, and I don't know of anything that you would add.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I didn't take it as being tied to a specific date. It seemed to be fairly open, now in existence, or that may hereafter be passed. So it seemed that, for me, that this was keeping up in time with what's happening in the state.
Right, pegged against the
This
state.
follows state statute.
Right.
Yeah.
I move that we accept Section 2 powers as written.
Second?
Any discussion, and I will follow that up with Mr. Kuskudis. Is there a change here that
No,
you'd
I
like to
just-
make,
I was
clarify?
pointing
Okay.
out that the language, even, there's not much you could change that would, other than you'd like the way something read, but this was statutory.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion or comment? No, okay. Ms. Menosos, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Close enough.
Can you help me?
Manousis.
Manousis, okay. Ms. Manousis, could you give us a roll call then?
Dr. Booth
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis? Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Mr. Collianis?
Yes.
Dr. Brew?
Yes. I'm going to put a note here that we discussed, confirmed that we're following current state statutes. Is that good for you?
Or compliant with state statute.
Okay, so what I wrote is confirm that this paragraph allows the city of Tarpon Springs to be compliant with Florida state statutes. S-T-A-U-T-E-S statutes.
S-T-A-T-U-T-E-S.
S-T-A-T-U-T-E-S. Yeah, I didn't think it would look right.
Statues with an extra T.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, flying along, limitation of powers. Let's start with, this is one of the longer sections for today. It's actually one page. Are there any questions, comments, or things we want to talk about in general on this section?
I do have a comment. When you get to H, when it puts a purchase price less than $350, because the charter is reviewed every 5 years, there should be some type of adjustment on an annual basis, whether it's a dollar amount or a percentage, that authorizing the city to purchase less than, whether it's 5% annually increase,
this-
$10,000 a year increase.
This was quite contentious last time.
I bet it was.
Okay. Well, we're not asking, I look at this not as a great increase, but to
No,
keep
it needs, I mean.
the cost,
we-
real
we had-
estate.
The Charter Review Commission initially went to the board with a significantly higher number. And I won't go into the details on that, but it got knocked back down. I would like to consider getting rid of a number and base it on something else that could be indexed.
Yeah. I have a pretty strong philosophy on that, personal philosophy. On the whole charter, to me, the charter is protection for the residents. It's not to facilitate the ease of the commission, the ease of the city administration. It's to protect the public. So I can tell you that the purchase of property is the one control that you need to leave in the hands of the public. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of other communities that had bigger numbers to buy a piece of property, it's not the purchase of the property that creates the problem, it's what goes on it. So if you keep somebody from buying 10, 20 acres to build a $100 million stadium, then you've probably done a good thing for the community. So my thing is you need to tie the hands of the elected officials and the city administration to where they, and the other part is, you want to encourage participation of the residents in their government. So the one way you increase participation is to have a referendum on an as-needed basis, or add the question to a regularly scheduled election. So, I mean, it may pass, but I'm not going to vote to increase the limit myself, or take it out. For those reasons.
And that's why we have 7 opinions
Yeah.
here.
I don't disagree with you at all. The only thing is, there's a number there, and if you're looking at the charter every 5 years, whether cost of living $350 today may not be $350 5 years from now, as far as, and so, so you increase it based on something, and I'm not saying a large number, but I think 350 in today's arena this provision should allow for some flexibility over time, and not, is it 10,000 a year, is it 5%? Because property values you're giving the city the opportunity to buy property at 350 regardless. And the thing is, 350 today, what about 350 3 years from now, or 4 years from now?
Or look at it from the perspective of 5 years ago, what would 350 buy you versus what it buys you today? When the number initially went in at 250 in '83, what was the purchasing power at that point? I think that
I 100% agree with
Well, the
you.
charter used to say, a long time ago, that purchase of property required a referendum, and it didn't matter what the cost was. I mean, the parking lot that was bought between Latour's property and the railroad track property was owned by the Fernald family. It was $26,000. It went to referendum. The piece of property that expanded, that Jim and I worked on together, that expanded Craig Park from Beekman Lane to the east, increased it by about 30%. I forget what we paid. It was nominal, $50,000 or $60,000. But what I'm saying is, if it's a good idea, the public is going to pass it. So I'm not concerned about, this isn't an apartment where I'm concerned about getting, I'm looking to cover a higher electric bill, higher insurance bill, higher tax bill. I mean, so I'm not concerned about a cost of living or escalation, Mike. I'm concerned about voter participation and tying the hands of the commission.
all good points. From my perspective, I look at the time it takes to actually execute a referendum. And how many opportunities will be lost if that is what's required to go forward? And I don't think at the numbers we're talking about acres and acres for stadiums. And I mean,
That was just an example, Carrie.
well, no, but I mean, you were making a point, and I don't think that's the point we are considering here. We've had many properties discussed in the last 3 years that most of them have had to go to referendum based on the purchase price. And if I mean, what is the cost of a referendum at this point if we were to go out for one? I remember the last 5 years ago, it was $40,000 or something like that.
It's a little higher than that, but for a standalone, it is approximately, this is just the county's cost is about $40,000. That's
And
not
then
counting the city's cost for everything else, legal ads, mailers, things like that to households.
But Irene, we have an election, just 1 year, we don't have an election, right? We have a city election every year?
No, we have an election every 2 year, for 2 years in a row. And then we have an off year because we have 3-year terms now. Now, the only difference is in the past, the county was able to support elections at various times. Now they could only support if it's our own election or if there's a scheduled election. So like now in August, we're piggybacking on with the county because we'll be able to do that. But if it was during another, the first question would be if they can support an election, if it's something that had to go to referendum.
So I don't think I was clear on I wasn't clear on the answer. How many times, so every third year you have a no election?
That's correct,
Every third year, okay.
unless we have a special election.
So on year 1 and 2, you have an election. Year 3, you don't. Year 4 and 5, you do.
That's correct.
So John, what I heard you say is the 350's in there. Your objection is not an annual increase or cost of living increase or whatever you want to call it. Your objection is that there should be a requirement, whatever that dollar amount, and I think the 350 is adequate at this point, but that your argument is that there should be a dollar amount that requires a referendum.
Yeah, they've got 350. I'm saying if you go to above that, you have to,
But you disagree with it, like whether it's an annual increase to that 350?
I don't think it's necessary, Mike, because you're not paying taxes, you're not paying insurance, you're not paying a light bill. I mean, your costs aren't going up, really.
Yeah, but the cost of real estate's going up.
Some years it does, some years it doesn't.
Well,
I mean, anybody who watches it, it's like a wave,
The only,
It's a big wave in '08.
yeah. Then they wouldn't have had to break that threshold.
They wouldn't have, for
All right,
sure.
then it wouldn't have to be referendum, but as.
Let's not go back there.
Yeah, so, but as prices do escalate, and you're in the real estate business, I dabble in it, not as well as you do, but we've seen prices to escalate, and some of them are the escalations are beyond, I could say reasonable, but they are what they are. And so, giving your commissioners, or their city manager, some flexibility in the cost of living, if you want to call it the cost of living, or increases in real estate, based on that 350, I don't think it's unreasonable, but one of the things that, going off a little bit on a tangent, has always been a concern of mine is when the person selling a property knows what the city can spend, that's what the price is.
Yeah, check out
Okay.
Mears and Safford.
So that's what the price is. So that's always been an issue with me, but it's got to be in your charter, but that's, you know, how do you,
Hey, Mike, if it were me, I could live with zero, but.
okay, but you don't want to go to
I know the
election
votes-
every time the city
The
wants
votes
to do
aren't there
something.
to do that,
Yeah.
but, I mean, personally,
Yeah.
I could live with zero.
So,
But, Carrie, just to give you an example. Say the town wanted to build a parking garage, or some,
Well, that's a reasonable example.
but,
How-
yeah, I mean, so you buy the property for $500,000 or $600,000, and then it's an $8 million parking garage. Those are the things that I think that's why I'm against raising it up and those things.
Well, from my perspective, I think that we vote our elected officials in, and then we have to be careful how much we want to micromanage their decision-making process. And this is an example where we're saying, well, we trust you with every other part of government, but we're not going to trust you to take opportunities to acquire green space, to acquire municipal land that could possibly be needed to, you know, address the future needs of the city as it comes. We're going to require you to go through a process that could be a year or longer, and the property may no longer be available. And I think it's really hog-tying our city
but-
commissioner.
But think about this, Carrie. Your thinking, in my opinion, is like you're electing angels.
I can't hear you.
My opinion, you're electing angels, okay? And what I'm saying is the charter should be built for the rogue commission, to prevent the rogue commission from harming the city.
Well,
I'm
what
looking
you're
at it-
doing, I think what your opinion is that you're writing this for the road commission and telling them, well, you can't build roads unless you get votes on that.
Oh, not road commission, rogue.
ROGUE. Well, that is always the consideration, and do we write a charter to prevent, you know, a disaster, or do we write a charter for the city to function as it should function?
Well, it can function at the same time that it prevents rogue boards, in my opinion.
I don't think we're preventing much, I mean, I think we're preventing an awful lot with a $350,000 number.
I haven't seen the city lose anything.
That's,
I mean, can somebody tell me what they lost by having a referendum?
No, but I will say, I've looked recently at what the percentage of people voting in elections, in municipal elections is, and it's extremely low. And I think most of the people voting in those elections, especially for referendums, which is even lower than for municipal regular elections, are probably people with a particular interest in something. So I don't think it's just the general public. I think those referendums are not going to get the widest number of votes. I think the elected officials have a wider range of the voting public. And I don't think there's anything horribly wayward about this or 350, but things have gotten incredibly much inflated in the last decade or two. And it does seem to me there should be some mechanism to keep it with the times, you know, in sort of a low-level, reasonable way.
the other thing is that if you look at the maturity of our town, we don't or rather our city, we don't have as much land available that's not developed. We don't, I mean, we are, you know, we're getting pretty full here. And things are gonna get more expensive, and if things come available, I think it's important to be able to match a buying opportunity with things that are in our strategic plan, et cetera, without, I mean, we have a lot of checks and balances now in terms of how the city is supposed to operate. That is supposed to also be a counterbalance to a rogue commission. I mean, we have a budget, we have a strategic plan, we have other things like that that are in place to guide the operation of our local government. And I just think that this is one case where you're imposing a micromanagement on it by having such a small number.
I haven't heard, I'm
Go ahead.
a little confused over the whole thing, because it's, today, 350 is not a lot of money, but last year it was. So my worry is, what is everybody's worry here? We're talking about earlier referendums, okay? If you're gonna spend, if the city commission is looking to buy something, they have to go to a referendum anyway. They can only spend so much money without going out for it. They have to prove what they want.
That's this number.
That's this number.
That's for a sum less than 350.
Yeah, so if
Right.
it-
Greater,
Yes.
greater than.
no, anything greater than
Greater than
350 is
350,
referendum. So if they found a piece of property for 351, it has to go to referendum. And all I'm suggesting is that number be adjusted on an annual basis upward, whether it's a 5%, so if you look at it or, $10,000 a year, in 5 years, the next charter review, it'd be at 400,000. So,
I'm sitting here because I don't know what's come up lately in the last year or the last 10 years that even falls into this.
We've had,
several.
we've had a referendum on the purchase of property, and we've purchased property right under the 350. So we've done both. Both have occurred within the last 12 months. Yeah.
You bought a piece for $1.8 million?
That
Well,
by
they bought a
referendum.
piece, or the new fire station is going, they bought that from me.
And that was under the 350?
Yeah, well, because we put it at the end of the 350 so we could sell it.
So we've done both.
Yeah, we actually,
So what we're talking about is, and what you're explaining to me is that it works the way it is. You did each side, you did both ways.
Yes.
And it worked.
It-
What I'm worried about is, I can't put a percentage in there guaranteed that it's gonna be raised
The-
every year.
The only two legal issues I would tell you are that sometimes when you're purchasing a piece of property, the referendum time period could be considered by the seller too long. That is one of the considerations from a legal perspective, that when you put in there, because remember, when you're purchasing property by a municipality, you always put it first subject to the board's approval. So, number one, we have to negotiate something and get board approval for the final number. And then number two, we have to get subject to approval of a referendum. Well, some people don't want to wait that long. That's one of the legal issues we run into regarding that.
We miss that because they don't wanna wait that long.
It's an issue. I'm not saying that it happens.
It's a business decision.
Right,
And we
exactly.
can't
But you
control
can
the
also-
business
Yeah.
decision by putting more
Yeah,
money
yeah,
in it.
yeah.
Wait a
Yes.
second, the
Jim,
city also has the right to offer some incentives to a seller to wait, like charitable gift contributions, an appraisal that comes in, right?
And I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that I've played,
The
I've
other
played both
issue,
sides.
the other issue is what Irene was talking about, is the cost of of a referendum if we cannot get,
Out of sequence.
right. That there is a legitimate cost, and it keeps going up.
and I'm gonna give you.
Not just the cost,
One
but
year that we don't
that
have an
they
election.
support the
Let me give
election.
you, let me give you a scenario, true scenario. We sold the we actually had the property listed for a lot more than what the city bought it for, okay? and the city wanted it bad because that's where they were gonna put their fire station. Their fire station was falling apart. Now, we got an offer for a lot more than the referendum amount, not from the city, from another party. We ended up reducing our price so we could sell it to the city because we decided we wanted to sell it to the city. And if I was making a business decision, I would have sold that property to somebody else, and the fire station would have to figure out something else to do out there. So giving the city the flexibility to bump up the price a little bit via the, and I think that back then the charter was $250. It was $250. So giving the city the flexibility to offer a little bit more money because their charter allows them to, based on increased in value over the course of a year, I think you're like you said, a businessman's got to make a business decision. If I'd have made a business decision, the city wouldn't own that property. So,
Or they could eminent domain you.
well,
They tend not to do that.
they tend not
for a
to do
lot of
that. I'd
reasons.
have made a lot more money. I'd have made a lot more money on eminent domain.
We're talking laws, Mike.
I know, but I would have made a lot more money on eminent domain.
Probably.
Okay, so the reason I'm putting this in, looking at an increase, is to give the city some flexibility, because, like you said, things are not getting any cheaper. If the things go the other way, then the city doesn't have to pierce that 350.
You know, Jim, before we make a decision
Okay.
based on data, let's actually get the data. Let's see how many, you know, since this 350 got put into place 5 years ago, let's see how many properties we purchased versus how many had to go to referendum, and how many had to go to referendum that the city had to pay for. I think that,
Yeah, that's fine with me. My only other problem with worrying about $40,000, anybody want to say how big the city budget is? That's peanuts. It's cost of doing business. So we're talking about the cost of doing business, and now we're talking just the opposite. Come on, guys. But I agree, let's go forward with it, get some more information, because nobody's convinced me it needs to go up at this point. That doesn't mean I do change my mind a lot of times.
Carrie, could we also find out the properties that were purchased, why they were purchased? You know, like Mike was talking about, you know, a piece of property that was acquired for a new fire station, which is kind of essential.
yeah, Ms. Manousis, can you take care of that for us?
Yeah, Mark can provide us that information.
Right.
That would be easy.
Yeah.
And that would be a great great interview with him, talking to him about this specific issue, rather than us doing it and changing it, thinking and hoping and the rest of it. We'll be here for a while.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
So I would make the question, which properties were purchased above and below the limit, and which ones were lost because of the time required to go for referendum, and what were the uses?
The other thing about loss that you may want to find out from Mark, and I don't know the answer to this, the consideration of which properties were just looked over, you know, passed up because there was no,
Time frame.
right. Or there was, so Mark may be able to add that.
In other words, the city would have liked it, but they knew it would take too long
Right.
or whatever.
We didn't-
Yeah, that's a
wasn't
good- That's a
considered.
good question. That's a good comment. So let's be data-based on this and really understand what the impact has been.
But keep in mind, too, public participation in their government. That's a big deal.
I agree it's a big deal. I mean, that's why we are here.
No, but I'm saying the referendum is a voter participation, a public participation. That's all. I won't say anymore.
Would it be possible to know what percentage of voters are actually voting on the referendums of the properties?
Yes.
Can we have that data too? Thank you. I mean, if the participation is very low,
If it's
I don't
low-
know that putting all properties through
If it's low,
referendum is going to bump up that number.
if it's low, that means it's low on everything, because I don't think, most of these referendums were at elections that had other than buying property in order to mitigate the cost of the election, right, Irene?
Right, so the bottom line is that you had other things bringing the voters in so that the participation number likely would have been lower? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if the number's low, it just shows that we have a community that's not as engaged as it should be in participating. I mean, if you have an election where you have an election of officials, and you also have on there just an item to buy a piece of property, and the numbers are low, it's that people are just not participating. But at least, why penalize the ones who do want to participate by not giving them a chance, I guess, is what I'm saying. I mean, reward the people who are participating, not penalize them. We're just talking philosophy, we just.
I should have the voter breakdown by question or by race or.
Okay, thank you. Well, that'll be an interesting set of data, and I will emphasize there are more ways to participate in the government than just by a vote on a referendum.
Oh, sure, we're here participating now, Carrie.
So there can be voices at public meetings, there can be participating on boards, there can be, there's lots of ways to have a voice in this government.
That was my only comment in section 3.
That was it?
That was it.
You don't want to make another one?
No, I'm good right now.
Okay. That was a good comment. That was something I thought we should discuss anyway.
Listen, that's not the last time we're gonna sit up here and butt heads. That's why
No,
we're
it's
here.
going to be, there's
Actually,
going to
enjoyed
be
the
more. That's
I
right.
enjoyed the-
And,
I enjoyed
you know, the spirited discussion is what gets us to a very good charter.
Absolutely.
So, and I expect that this is one that the charter officials will weigh in on as well. I remember from the last time it was
Yes,
pretty
it
extensive.
It was very vocal.
Okay, so I'm going to note that we had a discussion on, it was item H.
Was that 350 raised when you and Jim were on the last charter? Is that when it was raised?
It was raised from
Yes.
250 to 350 at the last one. The Charter Review Commission had suggested 750.
You guys are scary. I said, you guys are scary back then.
That's why it's better to put an escalator in there than than raising the number.
Yeah.
They're gonna spend whatever they got.
Yeah.
It's, I'm getting used to this. We did this once before, didn't we?
Yeah, so we've requested the info on the numbers of properties.
Carrie, you may want to put in as far as a question for Mark is, have there been properties that the city has overlooked, like the council said, because of
Right,
referendum requirements?
yeah, this one's kind of a long statement, so let me just get it going here. Requested the information on numbers of properties purchased by city, basically, and, price.
Well, then we have something like the, when the Marine Commerce Commission made a strong recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to purchase the spoil site, and they didn't do it.
Right,
And I think they've paid lease payments now that have been in excess of what the purchase price would have been.
yeah.
Should have brought it to us. Because that would have been the right buy. You know, I'm just sitting here thinking, we're talking about trying to get staff to come in and speak with us. Is this something where you want to ask the city manager to come in at our next meeting? Let's talk about this. H? I mean, we can bring him back. I mean, he can bring what he wants to change along with it, or he can come in and help us make that decision.
Okay, so what I'm writing down here is discussion on item H regarding the 350,000. Have requested information on the numbers of properties purchased by the city, their price, whether referendum, and the use of that property, plus properties not purchased due to referendum process. And those properties the city chose not to consider because of referendum. Did I capture it?
Yeah. That may be an analytic they don't have, but I think
No.
they'd be
Yeah,
able to
property
give some
usage.
insight.
Well, we,
Yeah, Mark
hopefully
may
we'll
be
be
able
able
to
to
just
get an
answer
idea.
that.
Some insight, yeah.
Yeah.
Harry,
Just
do you
get
have
some
property
insight.
usage in your list there? Property usage?
Yeah, I have
Oh,
usage.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you for your comments, your insights, your opinions. I think they're all important to be considered. I'm not going to ask for a vote on that because at this point, I believe we need more information to continue with the discussion.
Sounds
Are
fair.
we in agreement
I
with
agree.
that?
Agreed.
Yes, okay, moving on. Section 4, Police Department.
This ought to take about 2 hours, huh?
Good joke. Lighten up, 10 seconds.
2 hours, well, actually,
Yeah,
I think that
that-
one only took about an hour. so.
Yeah. No, I don't see a change on that.
What's interesting is, to me, this is like the major statement on the police department. And it's just a limitation on what the commissioners, basically, they can't eliminate it, and they can't replace it without going for referendum. Is that this was put in, it looks like 95. Was there ever an intent?
Well, the Dunedin did that. Dunedin did that. Dunedin had its own police force, and they decided to go county. And the issue, as far as residents are concerned, is, the sheriff's department is more reactionary, and the city police department is more proactive. And so the concern was that you would have, just law enforcement out there when you called them instead of being proactive in the community. And this community chose, the reason that was put in there is that we want to maintain, they didn't want to do what Dunedin did, and we wanted to make sure that we have a proactive city police force.
No, I think it's important. We are located at the far north end of a community, and we've already seen the impact of that based on, our public bus transportation services, our transportation disabled services, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't want to wind up having fire and police services that are delegated to the city that we don't get adequate service on.
Well, at
I
the
can agree
time,
with that.
like Mike said, Dunedin did it, it appered to us as a community that Dunedin was making policing a financial decision. And the community said, the business community went to the commission and said, look, that's not what we want. We have beat cops, we have people in the community that are part of the community. It's more than just about dollars and cents. It's about type of service, levels of service, and things like that. And I think that when that was changed, the police department, in my opinion, has lived up to the confidence we put in them.
Oh, I have to agree. Now, my only comment on this is that I was surprised that we had a limitation on the Board of Commissioners that was a paragraph unto itself associated with police department.
That's why it happened.
We also have the exact same thing for the fire department, and it would make more sense to me in terms of how a requirements document's written to have a section that says limitations on the Board of Commissioners, and then those things get listed.
That's fine.
That was the extent of the comment,
I'm-
not
if
whether
you
or
wanna
not we should.
If you want to
it was,
consolidate something,
Hmm?
if you think we ought to consolidate it, I'm okay with that.
I don't have an issue, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the fire department is different in that they have different agreements, et cetera, and there's some county interface, correct me if I'm wrong, that combining it may, keeping it in a separate category, because I think things are governed more of there's county agreements, et cetera, that if you just pigeonhole it into that one section, you may not have the flexibility.
Well, if you read the next section, it's basically the exact same words except police departments.
I know
replaced with fire
that, but I think there's a reason, and help me,
Well, they're
counsel.
also looked at differently, honestly, and there are some financial ramifications that do occur for some municipalities. And they're treated differently. So some financial issues, some will address with the police department, and some places will address it solely with the fire department. You are a unique situation because you are at the end of the county, but you do have contractual obligations with police and with other agencies and with the fire especially. Mutual aid is very big in fire departments. And so those contracts are different. Plus, remember, if you're going to make those changes, it has to go to referendum, and I'm not sure that's one of the ones you necessarily want to do for a
No,
referendum
I was
changes.
just, trying to understand why they would have been stated as a limitation, because this has nothing to do with the police department. It has to do with the fact that the Board of Commissioners cannot eliminate that without a referendum.
Right, and that's the
Period.
justification that I believe was already said, that people want to have their own, there is a cost, of course, associated with that.
No, I don't have a problem with the statement. I found that the organization of the document with this is as
Well,
confusing.
if you notice,
That
they were
was-
done on different time periods.
Weren't they discussing at one time doing a county fire? That's what they were
They
discussing.
were, and that has gone definitely the other direction.
Back then, is when they took Dunedin over, the big rumor mill was that they were going to take the whole county.
They were
For
coming.
police.
And the commissioners down county treated us like we were not real bright, like they do now. They've promised us a bridge for the last 7 or 8 years that never gets built. They wanted Tarpon to be part of Pinellas County, and we fought it, and we put this in here, so they can't ever have us.
And
We're
it's
unique.
it's a very good statement. However, if you go to our table of contents, we have incorporation and form of government. We have the creation and the boundaries. We have powers, and then we have limitation and powers. And then we've got these 2 paragraphs on police department and fire department, which is a limitation of powers. That it just surprises me that that is not incorporated as a subsection under limitation of powers. Because all you're doing with this paragraph is limiting the powers of the Board of Commissioners.
Carrie?
Yes.
I don't know this to be true. Well, part of it I know to be true. The first part on the limitation of powers was done up at one time. Then subsequently, there were charter changes. And whoever the attorney was at the time, instead of incorporating it into limitation of powers, he just made a separate chapter. I mean, that's what I see.
Makes sense.
I
Right.
mean, and that's what I see. I mean, it just,
If it fits better somewhere else,
I
we'll
mean,
move it.
No, I just,
as long as we can.
I figured that,
As long as it's
you know,
not
We can
done away
ask
with.
Mr. Salzman to look and see if we can slide it into the limitation of powers if you want. I'm good with it as long as it stays.
I actually like the fact that they're separate.
Do you?
Yes, because you don't know what's going to change in those areas.
Well, there's your answer.
okay.
But that's just a personal.
No, that's fine.
And that's, like you said, that's a hill not worth fighting by putting it in a referendum.
Right.
But
Well-
Carrie, you're right. I mean, just, it bothers me as someone who has organized books that this is not a proper organizational thing. It should be limitation of powers, property, and then maybe limitation of powers, organizational or something.
And I think if you were drafting the charter,
Right.
as opposed to making changes, that makes 100% sense. But you're to make changes, you have to bring it to a vote. And on some of these issues, if they're just something along those lines, I would tell you it's probably not something that you necessarily, I mean, when you make these changes, you really want to emphasize what you're changing and why, and the real need that you feel that the city needs to do that. And so, while I agree with you, if we were drafting how we would write it, but it's harder when you're making the change.
So
Because we have to go to questions.
So then perhaps, I mean, for me, the chapter 3, or section 3 should be better defined as limitations of powers regarding real estate. 4 should be limitation of powers regarding police department, and 5 should be limitation of powers regarding fire department.
You are correct, that is really what they are.
Okay.
But as I said, some of these adoptions were done at different periods of time. And that's just how they came about.
And the thing is, if you, let's say you wanted to broaden section 3 and get beyond just real estate, then you're gonna be leaving section 3 in place, limitation of powers, even though it says real estate. If you pigeonhole it in the real estate, then it has to do with real estate. If you decide or a future limitation of powers, you can actually expand section 3 to incorporate other limitations. So without changing the name, you could do that. If you change the name to real estate, then you're gonna create another section for other
Well,
limitations.
we have, you know, for the future, we got 2 other
6 and 7.
reserve
I'll
sections,
go ahead
and they
comment
could
on
say,
that. I have comments for 6 and 7.
on the reserved ones.
Okay.
Okay. No, I was gonna say, you could have other limitations that, you know, that then the errata go into. But,
Point well made.
Who would think one sentence would cause all of this?
well, this bothered me 5 years ago. It bothers me now, and if I'm ever on this board again, it's gonna bother me in the future. So this is purely about me.
No, it's not.
All right, I'd like to see these titled appropriately.
I think the city attorney made good points about not changing it. Simply, the number of times it's been passed, it's gonna cause more question and more doubt than anything else. And I'll go anywhere the board wants to go with it.
Well, going back to Mike's point, if you make it real estate, you're kind of limiting it, you know, and it's really more for formatting purposes rather than substance.
That would be a referendum
It
question
is.
to retire.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a
I mean, look, you could make that recommendation, and you could pass that, and the only recommendation I would make to you is perhaps revisit that after you've determined what you are going to change.
Yeah.
But let's
Pick your
just
battles.
say, for argument, you revise the 350 and you want to change the name, and they turn it down, so they turn down, because they turn down the,
Right.
they see the number,
on a
they
roll.
turn down the whole limitation.
Get on a roll.
That's
huh,
right.
Mike?
That's
out loud.
a
could
good
happen.
point.
It's gonna
That's a good
happen.
big X, and you didn't mean it to be a big X.
Yeah, they're not sitting here with us going through this trying to understand it. They're just reading it and saying, oh no. So,
So, section 5.
are we leaving section 4 alone? or-
I've left it for now.
Okay, we're coming back?
Well, we have to come back to 3, so the question is do we, are we going, Attorney Salzman suggested we see what other changes we've got, and then come back and look at whether or not it's worth changing. If we got a lot of other changes that are more important, we skip it. If it winds up, we don't have very many changes to go forward with, well, maybe we fix the format of the document.
So you want temporarily to, you want want to
Yeah,
just skip
we'll
to
come
section
back.
5, or you want to build on section 5?
No, I just want to make a comment that I'm going to basically put the same note that the question was raised regarding changing title for limits of power regarding fire department.
So,
I'm
that
writing
being
on
said, do you want a motion for section 5?
No, because I don't think we're ready to make a decision
all right.
based on Attorney Salzman's comment.
Okay.
But for the record, it seems like everyone's okay with the language in section 4 and section 5.
Yes, agree.
Okay, so we want to make sure that's on the record.
The language within the section is fine. The question is the structure of the document as implied by the titles.
So you want a motion as to the language?
No, I don't want any motion right now, because we're going to come back and revisit it if we don't have, if our review process does not have an extensive list of changes that we're making. If we have an extensive list of changes, we don't want to throw maybe less important things into the mix. We want to keep the focus on the more important things.
The easiest,
That's my suggestion.
the easiest way, and I wrote on the top of mine for the police and the fire, come back. Let's come back and figure it out later. We get messed up with one sentence, where are we? Oh.
Okay. Anyway, those are 2-minute sections when we get forward. Any comments on the reserve section, section 7? Mr. Kouskoudis?
No, I'm good.
You're okay?
Yeah, I think less is more.
Less is more. Okay, so now we're up to section 8. Board of Commissioners composition, duties, responsibilities, and powers. And by the way, thank you for being able to project this. Modern technology is a wonderful
Irene, could you
thing.
leave it like that? Because the print's a little bigger?
I'm
Or-
sorry.
The way you just had it, the print's a little bigger.
Oh, sure. Let's see.
Thanks.
Yeah, she can close off the navigation panel and
Yeah,
just
that's what she's
adjust it
saying.
with the
Can
slide bar
enlarge
at
it
the
on the
bottom.
bottom corner, Irene?
Okay.
No,
Hold on.
right there.
All right, do we have any questions on this?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Is that okay?
For H and I, reviewing every 3, and update every 3 fiscal years, all elements of the comprehensive plan, and then of the strategic.
Put 5.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'm not sure 3 years is realistic.
Yeah, I had put a note 5.
It's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have the same.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you meet yourself coming and going.
yeah.
Well, and if you look how long the process has already taken, it's already been a year that they've just been reviewing it, so
I
every 3
agree.
years?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ironically, I had the same note. Every-
Yes, I have the same thing here, too. And the other thing is, do we have any additional plans that should be addressed? Do we have a long-term fiscal plan? I know that there's a number of plans that we've got. I thought there was more than just the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan. I thought there was additional. I can't remember. No?
I don't know, all of them that might be stuff with planning.
I don't know why. I thought there was another plan.
I mean,
That can
there's-
be a question for the city manager.
Is there a question about the Board of Commissioners acting as the Community Redevelopment Agency Board?
It's pretty standard. It's pretty
Okay.
standard.
It's usually what you see.
Right, okay.
I have another comment in that section once get a chance.
Carrie, something?
Okay, question?
So almost all of these, when we start getting the elected officials and the charter officials in, we're going to revisit most of them, right?
I'm sorry, I heard regarding the charter officials, are we going to?
These sections, like Section 8,
Yes. Are we going to come back and revisit them?
what I'm saying,
Yes.
we are going to revisit them when we have these other people comment. Okay.
Yeah, the reason I think it's okay to go forward is just let's see where we are right now. And that'll help us put our questions together for the other officials. Like, I'm keeping some sticky notes I'm throwing in here so that we make sure that our questions that come up in discussion get addressed. As opposed to kind of trying to come up with them in real time, so. This whole process is a chicken and egg kind of thing. We want to have the individuals come in to talk to us about their concerns, but in the meantime, we really need to be knowledgeable in order to know what we need to ask them as well. So that's why we're kind of going fast through this, just to see where we are and where we all had concerns based on our first reading. Okay.
So I have another comment on this section. But is it okay to do it now?
I'm sorry.
Is it okay to do it now?
Yeah,
Okay.
please do.
So when you get to, when it talks about, and I think it's J, when it talks about appointing boards, et cetera, and it says only city residents may serve on city boards, committees, or other bodies designated or appointed to perform some service or function I would probably want to include to prioritize applicants that have special expertise in that area. We have a lot of talent in this community, and to the extent that there are talented people who want to sit on a board, that I think the city should prioritize those applicants over John Doe that lives down the street.
Thank you.
That's a good,
Thank you.
yes. No, that's a really good comment.
Well, there's, just to expand on what Mike said, and this may take some language from the city attorney, but the city is a CLG, a comprehensive local government, okay? The Historic Preservation Board, by statute or something, Andy, is supposed to be comprised of professionals in the field, architects, contractors, planners, people with expertise. The city has hardly ever followed that. I mean, to me, they're jeopardizing their status as a CLG, which really gives the city a lot of positive benefits. When they go to grants, they get extra points for being a CLG. There's lots of benefits to being a CLG. So if we're going to Mike's comments, and Mr. Salzman, is that maybe that we put in there that they have to follow the rules when they make these appointments.
I love that we're having this discussion, particularly about the historic preservation part. First off, the CLG, I think, happened like it was a long time ago.
No,
but
we've had it for a long time. We
is
got it
there
through-
any renewal of that? Is there continuing education that has to happen? I've noticed that, we've lost a lot of the people that had gone through that training,
I think the CLG, the part that I'm talking about, Carrie, is the makeup of the board.
But I think there's a bigger concern. And I think you've brought up
agree.
one part that addresses the board. That's really important. However, let's not forget the fact that let me be polite in how I state this.
While you're thinking, what's a CLG?
Conference of Local Government.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, it's a set of processes and standards by which a city's supposed to operate to preserve its historic integrity. Part of that is having a board to watch out. Part of it is identifying those areas that are historically significant and having those
An enabling ordinance, and we have the planning department. It's,
that
all those things add up to it, Mike.
right, and I think that, I think that addressing this in the charter could really help beef up what is currently done, and from what I've seen done over the last 15 years. I think that we need to be very attentive of it. I think your comment is spot on.
I'll second that with a vengeance. No, I mean, I'm on the Public Art Committee, and there are very, I know everybody looks at kind of a trivial thing, public art, but there are specified, skills and talents that are supposed to be the qualities of somebody that sits on that board. And sometimes, people get passed through and get put on that committee that are clueless.
So that's for the art,
Yeah,
that's the art committee.
and we're one of the few, I think the only other one is sustainability that's not quasi-judicial. So we don't have, an attorney or anything of that sort. So, it's, and I look at, what goes on at these meetings, and, sometimes it's very frustrating because, you're trying to get a project accomplished, and you've got people or a person on the committee that, just doesn't know what's happening. It's really counterproductive.
The only language you may want to consider is also, if you're going to make some changes along those lines, what happens if we don't get people in those categories?
That's-
Which is always a
Train them.
problem.
That's why I said prioritize.
Right, that makes sense.
Instead of
because-
require,
And you
because,
train them.
But
Right, well, some require expertise. You need an architect, you need a planner, you need somebody along those lines, and if you don't get an applicant for that, what are you supposed to do?
yeah, that was the problem.
well, that's why, again, going back to the language, is you give you an example, when I first ended up on planning and zoning, my choice was not to be on planning and zoning, it was something else, but they said, because of my skill set, I would better be served on planning and zoning, and that's where I ended up, which I was fine with. But, so when there are applicants that come in, instead of just giving it to, Joe that lives down the street because Joe that has no skill set in those certain areas, when you have an applicant who may have a skill set, by putting the language in, prioritizing them, it actually, in my opinion, it takes some of the onus away from the commissioner or whoever to say, hey, I wanted you, but this person, we had to prioritize because they had the skill set. And so that way, it actually helps the commissioners in the decision-making to fill those spots. So I think that's,
Something, we gotta craft something.
yeah, well, that's
We
what.
can put language together.
That's why I, prioritize those with the expertise in that particular area. So,
No, I think that's a great.
And one more comment, sort of going back to your comment about the big picture, particularly of the Historic Preservation Board, which is a board I've followed. But one thing I've noticed in looking at the big picture, I've read their mission, they do not fulfill, only one point in their mission, which is compliance. They are not nominating other properties, they're not doing anything else in terms of historic preservation. And getting well-qualified people in there, I think, would be part of fulfilling that mission, or somehow sending them to some kind of training.
Yes, I mean.
So how do you get these boards to actually fulfill their complete mission?
I think,
training.
as I recall, there was a summary on each of the boards later on, and I think we need to look at how we establish criteria there, et cetera. I know that for the historic preservations, the state of Florida has CLG training annually. You know, that should possibly be a requirement when someone agrees to serve on that board, that they agree to go to that training or something. I don't know, I don't know if you put it in here or how we write that requirement, but we need to have knowledgeable people on these boards to have them be effective and achieve what they're supposed to be achieving.
Totally agree.
May I also throw in some sort of cursory knowledge of Robert's rules? That's another thing that seems to be lacking on some of the boards.
Well, that could possibly be dovetailed in with sunshine law training. So, because everybody needs to be trained on sunshine laws, they should have a rudimentary version of that. Mr. Terrapini, did you have something to add to that?
Only that, I think that some things, while they're good ideas, and they should be pursued, but I'm not sure the charter is the right venue. Maybe it's an ordinance, or it's or rules of procedure for that committee, or that they have to agree to go to a CLG conference. If you're on the board, you agree, and,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah,
we'll
not to gum
address-
up not to gum up the charter with,
No, we don't want to gum up the charter with that, but we need to look at how those committees are defined and make sure you have at least one knowledgeable person on a
Yeah.
committee.
well, the makeup of the CLG, because it's a state designated thing, I don't see that as gumming up the charter. I see that as making the commission follow
The rules.
the rules.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
The other stuff of, you know, Robert's Rules of Order and stuff, that could be like part of the committee's responsibility, or their rules of procedure or something that they have to follow them, and give them a copy.
yeah, I mean, one of the other benefits too is it allows for proper vetting, because you could have somebody up there who's an applicant, and you know, if you're vetting them, you know what questions to ask them because you have that expertise, or you have your knowledge in that area. And I think it just bodes well for effective boards.
Okay, so right now, I have 3 things that we're looking at changing in this section. The first one is for items H and I, whether we maintain the every 3-year requirement for these plans, or we change that. That's the first one. The second one is to add the wording to paragraph J to prioritize applicants with special talents, knowledge, and skill sets. And then I think that we should add an additional requirement R that requires the Board of Commissioners and the government of the city to maintain their CLG status.
Where are you, Carrie, on that?
She's adding
Adding a
Oh.
There's no R.
subparagraph
Oh.
R that would be to maintain CLG. Okay, so I think we have J and R. Okay, let's talk, though, back to H and I. What is the time frame that you think should be implemented?
I'm good with 5.
5 years.
5?
Yeah,
5?
yeah, 5.
5? 5, okay. And there may be another plan here that gets coordinated that's been introduced, and I just want to make sure that we're not missing one. So I have a note for the city manager, are there any additional plans that need to be coordinated in section 8? Okay. Since we're so definitive on this, do we want to go ahead and adopt these changes? Or we want
I'd
to,
rather develop some more sophisticated language.
well, the
John.
attorney will do that for us.
Right.
We're
But I want
elected.
to see the language before I adopt it.
Yeah, I'm with John on this one.
Right. Well, absolutely, you should review the language that, and decide
Yeah.
prior to adoption.
I mean, I think we're in agreement, it's just a
Yeah,
matter of
okay.
tweaking
So,
it.
so I'll just summarize. We're going to change 3 fiscal years to 5 fiscal years for items H and I. Should we put that as, should we change the date that it's to begin? So, for example, October 2023 would go to 2024, or 2025, or start 20, because it, or start 2026? I mean, when are we going to require that to start?
I think 5 years from, I'm sorry. I was thinking, go ahead. I was thinking 5 years from the last one,
From the last one?
and then if every 5 years. So if we've just done I think, did we just do a comprehensive?
I was going to say that that would be something on both the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan that you get with the, either the city manager or the planning director to give you when they'll be finalized.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
So then you could take it from there.
yeah.
I believe when this was put in place, at the time when they added it, they wanted to be sure that it got reviewed because there was no mechanism for those. There was, but nothing officially to review those
So-
at all.
So the first time may be shorter than the 5 years. In other words, let's say they just did it last year, okay? And my thought is rather than 5 years from then, it'd be 5 years from the last one.
Right.
So the next time might be shorter, but moving forward, it'd be 5
Years.
after that.
That works.
So rather, you want to take the date out and make it,
I would just, by thought, I mean, obviously it's up to this board, but 5 years from the last, which has been as recently.
right, well, that was my thought.
Yeah.
Let's find out when that most
Yeah.
recent one is and fix the dates there.
Okay.
Right, but please do put in a date, because I know those dates have slid by, as far as I know, in the past. even
I
when it
think,
was
I
supposed
think
to be
within,
done.
I think we're within 1 year out of the last one.
Oh, yes.
Chris.
And,
You are.
and that's why,
You are.
like an example for they had a strategic plan, it just hadn't been reviewed in over 25 years. So that's why so that's why I'm saying, that's the reason those were put into the charter, so to be sure that those are reviewed every so many years.
Okay.
Can we talk a little bit longer on J?
Yes.
Y'all talked quite a bit about having board members, appointed board members, be somewhat qualified on the board they're being placed on. So we have a sentence here that says only city residents may serve on city boards. If we're looking for somebody who is right over the line, is there a way to bring that somebody in to fulfill what we need for qualified people?
I mean, reach out to unincorporated Tarpon Springs?
Well,
no,
I don't know where, but I know that this is a problem sometimes, getting qualified people, and we talk about it. And I think the staff will tell you that there's not a lot of people that sign up to be on the committees.
Right.
You know, it's usually by word of mouth, or the board knows somebody, commissioners know somebody, and they put them on there.
Yeah, and they come from the Citizens Academy too, right, Irene?
Well, we're getting more now that we have Citizens Academy. The other thing is not all, it's in the makeup as well. So whatever those qualifications should be, should also be included in, each section is in the code. That's when they make up these boards, and I know like Public Art has, X, Y, and Z should be in there. But so if, maybe the commission should look at all boards and look if they should have, because times change, if they would have to be corrected in the makeup. The other thing is, the problem we're having, there again is that we're not getting a lot of applications, no matter, we put it out there, we send press releases, we try to do word of mouth, we've contacted associations. We're just not getting that pool either of applicants. So there are a lot of boards that people have, their term has expired, but they're helping to continue to serve, or we wouldn't be able to have a quorum to continue in those important boards that the city needs. So we're constantly trying to find ways to put it out there. We're getting more, like I said, with the, once they get to see the workings of the city through the Citizens Academy, we're having more people interested. But that's the problem. So we can't go forward with sometimes with a nomination, or to fill those vacancies, because we don't have anyone that period. Not more, even more less to try to fill the, those positions.
I don't know where we go on that. I know you guys are working hard and fill those, I talked to you about it, but how are we as a group gonna help them do that? We still need people to come and sit on these committees, that's the problem.
Well,
With somebody without skin in the game, I'd have a problem.
Do they announce it?
I'll,
Resident.
you know,
Meeting,
the
commission
city
meeting?
can choose to bring in professionals. We have a city attorney that sits on many of the boards to provide legal counsel. And it might be if the city can't find volunteers that have the qualifications necessary to lead the board in the way it needs to go, the city can opt to bring in an advisory person, you know, to sit with that board.
Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack. I don't know the answer to it, but I know it's probably the biggest problem we have.
Do they announce it at each board meeting, Irene, under comments? That we're looking for this, we're looking for the Arts Committee, we're looking for the Preservation Board, we're looking for, I mean, announcement, a lot of people watch
We have.
the city commission meetings.
We have some,
Oh,
we
yeah.
have it, we don't announce it every meeting, but, you know, because it,
Maybe it sink in.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you do that part, you do it way at the end, and sometimes it's really late, so maybe that could be
The beginning, yeah.
done early, yeah.
Do you, when you send your water bills out with specific information about something that's coming up or something like that, could you do that?
We've done that.
You've done it? We got a
put
bunch of
press
lazy damn
releases
people in Dartmouth.
on the
That's for sure.
website.
Every municipality has the same problem. I
Right.
don't want you
Is
to
it?
think it's special to
Nobody wants to
Tarpon.
work, everybody wants to eat.
Volunteerism
Some
has
people don't want
died.
to.
Well, certain boards are harder to fill than others. Just by the nature of, you know, who wants to participate.
Well, the real answer to that is just let Michelle and Irene worry about it.
Give them a taser and set them loose in town.
Okay,
We could do
so
that.
I'd like to make another, ask another question here. We have under item Q, to improve and maintain the navigation on the Anclote River. I would think that that would be sufficient, but I did hear an awful lot about with regards to getting the dredging kicked off on this last round. You know, it was hard to get going on it, and I don't know if that was a city issue, I don't know if it was a Army Corps issue, et cetera, but,
Can I weigh in on this one?
yes.
Okay. I was actually on the Marine Commerce Commission, which still exists, by the way. It kind of went into hiatus. I resigned to go on the Public Art Committee. But it was, the role of the Marine Commerce Commission was to sort of set everything up, you know, for the actual dredge. The one thing that we couldn't do by law was to lobby for funds. So we had gotten to the point where we felt that we had done that, and then we needed money to do it. So that's when the committee kind of just dropped off, because we had kind of fulfilled our purpose. I know there's been some kind of casual talk about waking it up and getting it going again, because we already have to start looking at the next dredge. And part of the problem was, you know, the AMCO flows through a number of different municipalities.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the county, you've got Pinellas, Pasco, you know, plus there are federal channels, you bring in, you know, the Army Corps. And, you know, it was a very complex problem. And the thing is that, you know, the last dredge was done in '98. So the fact that the river was even that much more silted over made it even more difficult. And again, it was the issue with the spoil site, identifying a spoil site. And as I said, the commission made a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to purchase the site, which was, you know,
Not done.
not done.
Right.
So,
That was a big mistake.
Yes.
huge, huge.
So if you look at the section Q, it talks about maintaining recreational boating access. It does not talk at all about maintaining commercial fishing access
Not only commercial fishing, but you have things like boat building.
and boat building. Right, but that's not even addressed in this section.
Exactly. I was going to
Should
bring
it
that up,
be?
actually. So, you know, when, let me see now. The company on the other side of the river that builds these huge, you know. Duckworth, thank you. They had built this giant boat, sort of a la Calypso, you know, commissioned by, I think, the University of South Florida. And they couldn't get it out until it was a full moon high tide.
Yep.
And even that was kind of chancy. So it's really affected even commercial endeavors in town.
So the question is, I would have, does the charter need to be changed to address the commercial fishing and boat building
I would-
needs
I
of the
think so.
city?
I think it's a zoning
But
issue.
Just a little bit of history. You know, we have a lot of waterways, but there's only it's a very defined navigable channel by the Corps. It was authorized it took act of Congress in 1935 to authorize the channel. The same channel exists today. I mean, the Corps tweaks it a little bit to dredge it, but the authorization is the same. The Corps, is my understanding, would just as soon eliminate ports like Tarpon. You know, they want Port Miami, Port Tampa, Port Jacksonville, things like that. So we have to really fight the reason it's a struggle, Joan, is because we have to really fight to keep that authorization alive. But then the bayous and things like that that's the city's responsibility. It's not part of the,
Right.
although we can tag on when as I understand it, we have tagged on in the past when the Corps has dredged, we contact the contractor and tag on. So, but yeah, I mean, the waterways is it's a big deal, you know?
We put that and added to include those cuts. The cut is the area from the main channel going to where you put your boat up on a lift or something. Right now, I've watched a cut in front of my house. In the last 3 years, that island is turning loose and coming in there. And when the feds did the dredging, they created those spoil islands, but they were supposed to maintain that group of sand that keeps washing out. You can't stop it from washing out unless you put a no wake zone. The feds and the state doesn't think that's the right place
just-
for one.
Yes, just so I'm understanding is, the Anklet River is actually federally navigable river, and it's governed by the federal government, limited by certain state rights, but it's under federal jurisdiction.
the defined channel. Mike.
Correct,
It's
correct.
It's the actual survey
Yeah.
of a, and
So,
it's 100 feet, it's not big.
so,
It's 100 feet wide.
so,
Right, it's also considered the only safe harbor, I think, between Tampa Bay and, I forget what the northernmost city, but it's crucial.
yeah, but it
emergency use.
falls under a federal jurisdiction. So trying to relate this to the charter is, it as much as it says that in there, the charter or the commission may be powerless. The only thing they could do is, which they had to do, is to force the Army Corps to fund or to pay for the dredging. And that's a 5 to 7 year process, so as soon as you're done, you're making application
next
right
one.
away.
Right.
Because it's gonna take you that long to get approved. And as John said, we're not high on their radar.
But I think you just identified a requirement here for the city to stay on top of that.
Correct.
for-
But no matter what it says in here, at the end of the day, that the river is under federal jurisdiction. So I don't know how much we would need to change here to give more authority to the commission and I'm trying to relate it to the charter.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know what more authority we can give the commission that can give the commission more oomph to do what already the charter provides for them.
Well, I think we could emphasize the need for them to lobby for funds, because that seemed to be the big issue with the last, this current dredge.
Well, but I don't know, can you make that constitutionally
It's
required?
usually, yeah, not something you would put in the charter.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
The portion we put in the charter about dredging the cuts, the feds aren't gonna do that. They're gonna dredge the channel.
But it says
We
that
put
in
it
here.
in here with the purpose is that when they do the channel, the city needs to get involved and get those contractors, whoever, to do the cuts. That's the time you have to do it at the cheapest part. Can they afford it? I'm sure the city's gonna say, we'll never have that much money. If you wanna do away with waterfront property, cause it's getting close, I welcome you to come to my house and watch it on a low tide. It is not good.
I understand that, but, try to make requirements in a charter that they may not be able to do. To give you an example, when you have a contract with the federal government, if they can't necessarily add on to a contract for local needs, just like when they did Tarpon Avenue, they had to dig it up 3 times, one for the DOT, one after the DOT was done and released it, then the city came in and dug it back up again. And when the city was done, then Verizon came in and dug it up again. Why they didn't do everything all at once is because when you control that project, it's under your jurisdiction, and you don't combine correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't require other jurisdictions, or do you want other jurisdictions involved in your contract? Am I correct in that?
It's difficult to have more than one agency
So
working together.
mandating what the commission should do when the federal government is doing one thing, I don't know if you can mandate it. They could best try to comply with it, but you can't mandate it.
It put
Okay.
it put the responsibility on the city, okay? The cuts are not maintained by anybody. They have to be maintained by the city because you're paid, well, the state claims they own it now, submerged water. Who's gonna do it? I mean, we put in here that they have to do the cuts. Well, feds aren't gonna do it and the state's not gonna do it because it's ours. So the city has to do it. It has to be in here. If anything, we need to make it stronger because they're not even looking at it. Nobody from the city has been out there to look at what's coming off of those small spoil bags.
So let me ask you a question, Jim. Okay, this is a requirement in the current charter. So you're saying that they don't comply with it anyways. So if you make it stronger, how do you force compliance?
Making it stronger may enforce compliance. You know how you make it? You get everybody who lives on the water to come to the meetings when they do the budget.
Well, that's how you're gonna enforce compliance, but right now,
Okay, they're-
if it's
they're-
already there,
They're not gonna bring it up on their own. They're not
I
gonna
gue-
do it.
I guess what I'm saying is, you could add more language in, you could add as much language in the charter as you want, but if the commissioners are not gonna
Well,
comply, then you're just adding
But maybe
language.
we're
I
looking-
hear both of these, but here's my question. It's, the only place that talks about the cuts is about maintaining a navigational chart of that. It does say recreational boating access to and between the Antelope River and its estuaries and the
local
city
channels
bayou
and
shall
cuts.
be provided by maintaining safe navigational depth.
No, under two.
And I think that's what you're saying, is that the cuts are filling in.
They're filling
Yeah.
in drastically.
And so I don't see that this is really clear about maintaining the cuts. It's maintaining a navigational chart of the cuts.
And I agree with you, you could be,
I'm with you 100% if you want to write it some way that puts that absolute responsibility on somebody to do that. We can't just, it's like a stoplight goes off.
Maybe
It
we're in
goes
the
off.
wrong, maybe we're in the wrong vehicle. Maybe we should be saying to the commission, you need to adopt an ordinance that strengthens the committee that John was on, the Marine Advisory Committee, and their responsibility shall be this, this, and this, and they shall maintain this committee, and that committee shall report, give quarterly reports to the commission. But do it through an ordinance and not gum up the charter.
I don't have a problem doing
Yeah.
anything that may help. It's a major problem. Tarpon's
Oh.
a waterfront community. It's not just in
let's-
front of my house. You guys, it's not just there, it's everywhere.
I understand, because if you're in Kramer Bayou, depending on the tide, you can't get your boat
That's
out.
exactly right.
Well, look at all the bayous are the same. Spring Bayou, Whitcomb Bayou, they've all just, I mean, for years, and I love Epiphany, but and Mike and Jimmy will tell you this, for years, the city would throw yellow sand on the banks of to make the ryegrass grow. Where do you think all that sand went?
In the bayou.
Into Spring Bayou. When I
How
was
about-
growing up, there were rocks this high all along the seawall. There'd be sheephead and redfish and stuff. Now there's this much mud on top of those rocks that were this high.
Right.
I mean, all the bayous are the same, including by Jimmy's house.
It's everywhere, and I'm telling you, I don't think we have 10 years, okay? That's an outside to me. If something's not started, if something's not done, it'll just be a channel. And right now, the state is trying to buy all those islands from the feds because they don't want anybody building on them.
Which islands?
The only island left,
Lollies.
island to the left is where,
Most of them are owned by Pinellas County.
yeah, I said the state, Pinellas County is buying them, yes. All the way out. Anybody who owns them
Yeah.
and wants to get rid of them, the county's buying them,
Right.
they don't want, okay, that doesn't take care of the problem. The problem is nobody's gonna, the islands are gonna really be a mess. It's,
Well, I'll just tell you a little, you guys like stories? I'll tell you a story. There was a guy in Tarpon who lived just down the street from Jimmy, had the same problem with getting his boat in and out. He would put a disc, a Grove disc, behind his boat and pull it in and out from his house to the channel to make a swat. It was Peter Knight.
yeah, I
Would-
know. I know.
He made his own channel.
It's, and marked it, and it's still there, it's out there,
Yeah.
right in front.
But that's how it got made.
Yeah, and it's a big problem, guys, and I don't know what the answer is, I'm not sure any of us know what the answer is.
I like John's suggestion, though, is,
Make an ordinance.
yeah, have an ordinance to that effect, but, you know, strengthening the charter in that area when it's not even being addressed because it's already in there, you're just not, I don't think you're giving it any more teeth than the teeth that are already there.
The ordinance might be better.
I've been looking at, while we're talking Muni Code, some of the municipalities and the county, and almost everything dealing with the waterways is in by ordinance. I didn't see anything else by charter.
Oh, that's fine. If that's what it takes to get it done, I'm 100% for it. That's not a problem with me. I don't think it's gonna change in Tarpon unless there's a real headache coming.
Well, again, going back to what John said, is to, revive the Marine Commerce Commission and get it up and rolling again and keep it going.
Yeah, and make them mandate they give reports so that it stays in front of the commission.
Because you may not be eligible, the city may not be eligible for federal funds, but there may be some state funds with regard to that, and having the proper resource, the proper committee that,
The state does have funds, Mike,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
so, but you ain't gonna get it out of the federal government.
Yeah, one of the problems delaying this dredge was that the state diverted a lot of the funds that were allocated to the dredge to the,
Hurricane,
what?
was it a hurricane?
Yeah, hurricane relief up in the
Panhandle.
Panhandle, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if anybody rode up there, you wouldn't
I went.
begrudge them to have the money.
No, not at all, but
I took a big trailer full of food and stuff up there. It's the worst thing I've ever
It
seen.
was terrible.
Anyway,
But Carrie, going back to one of your original comment on Q2, it doesn't have to say recreational boating. It could say, better it would say commercial and recreational,
Well,
or just boating.
Hearing the discussion, the recreational boating access, I think we have to keep it there and very specific, because that's about maintaining the cuts from the channels.
But
I think that if we were going to address the commercial and the boat building, that should be a separate paragraph.
okay, but you could put this as just boating, or commercial and recreational boating, and its estuaries and our city bayous, because the commercial, of course, aren't going to go on the bayous, but they may go on the others. Anyway.
Comments?
I don't know how much commercial, other than the federal navigable Handclote River, there's any commercial aspects of the waterways.
Yeah,
Shrimpers.
that's what I'm taking away, that the
Well-
federal government, the responsibility of the city is to advocate for
Okay.
access for commercial and boat building. And maybe that's the paragraph that goes in, that they advocate for funds from, the federal sources to keep the channel open.
Okay. If it does the same thing.
one other thing, licensing for dredging is extremely hard to get. But I know for a fact that guy 2 houses down from me hired a company that got, I want to say overnight, but they got their permission because the spoil islands were turning loose and it was filling it, and you don't have to go through all the government rigmarole for that, so. And I know we can't read that, write it, whatever, but
Some kind of ordinance, Jimmy, make a recommendation. We could recommend that they create an ordinance that,
yeah, I'm fine, I'm all for it, more power to it. I don't think anything's gonna happen, but we gotta try.
most of those, just more history for you. Those spoil islands that are in the river, those islands in the river were spoil islands. What they originally were marsh areas in the river. And then when the river was dredged in 35, they put it on top of the marsh because that was a good spot for it. So, but anyway, I have an 1897 Corps of Engineers survey of the river that shows all of that,
Really?
an original.
That's amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Could you furnish city a copy of it so they'll know where to dig?
I think I gave one to the Historical Society.
Lolly's got gold on his island, so just so you
Yeah,
know.
right.
Lowry does.
Somebody else's gold, but
I'll
it's
tell you where I'll tell you where the treasure was on North Key. Because somebody found it. There's a hole out there that's as big as this room.
really.
Some professional guys found it.
Sounds like Oak Island.
It was, only these guys found it, I think,
What was it again, John?
on North Key. It came in with dug up a big giant hole in the island.
Did you see where Honeymoon Island is kind of split in half?
Well, that wouldn't be the first time. That's how Caladesi got to be an island, where
That's how
Honeymoon's.
Three Rooker got to be an island.
Three Rooker was, yeah.
So it was just a
Sandbar.
sandbar.
Yeah.
Part of the Lighthouse Island turned into a sandbar on that side too. Yeah, it's tough.
Reminiscing.
Trying to get all this down. Almost done. So I got that. Okay, so I think our changes are as follows. To paragraph J, prioritize applicants with special talents, knowledge, and skill sets, add that statement. Subparagraphs H and I, change 3 years to 5 years, and we need a new start date for that in those paragraphs. The next one is require city maintain CLG status and follow guidelines and rules. And then on subsection Q, added discussion. We're talked about an ordinance to get them to do the cuts. I mean, the cuts are in there, they're just not doing them. So I don't know how we do that, but I think we need to add something that's regarding the advocacy for commercial shipping and boat building access from the Gulf to the, up the Ancourt River to the alternate 19 bridge. And that's just advocacy for funding. And then, really, the question is, how do we get them to focus on the requirement for the cuts? And I think that might possibly be done with the committee or ordinance, or we can address that and how we go forward.
John, what creates a Marine Commerce Committee, an ordinance?
I'm sorry?
I asked John,
You
what
read
creates?
my mind. I would have to go back to my notebook and see, how it was created.
Maybe we asked them to strengthen the ordinance that created the Marine Commerce Committee and.
Right. It was done in the summer of 2016, that much I
Boards are
remember.
usually created by resolution.
By
Resolution.
resolution, so maybe we ask them to change it from a resolution to an ordinance, and it has to have reports and define what the purpose of the committee is and what their responsibilities and obligations are.
Right.
And Jimmy, I think that's how you get to, getting it, cranked up a little bit.
Right, and
all for it.
most of the people, Mike mentioned skin in the game. Most of the people on the committee were people like Julie Russell, Jane Jurgensen, who at the time had a shrimp boat.
That's what it takes.
Right. Paul Forsborg. There was one guy whose name I don't remember, who was one of the divers. And Pandali Klanaris was the chair. So it definitely needs, reexamination and revival,
And what was
reinvigoration,
the
if you
name,
will.
what was the official name of that?
The Marine Commerce Commission. And I think our first meeting was either in late spring, early summer of 2016. So it was 8 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Boy, that was a discussion. Thank you. I think the ideas were great. we still have information that we need for a couple of these, so I've got it all written down. I think we can look at section 9 and get that done in maybe 10 and then call it a day. What do you think? Okay,
That's good. That's a great suggestion.
okay. Well, I think our meeting time goes to 5, but let's stop early. How's that for a
That's
concept?
even better.
Yeah, I think,
No, we've had-
considering we've got looming, I think we should point.
We've had great discussions, and the bottom line is, we are well on our way to understanding the questions and the things we need to focus on, and that's the whole point. So, section 9, duties of the mayor.
Looks good.
Okay.
It's good to me.
Looks good.
Any changes? Are we happy, or are we just tired?
I mean, that's, I don't think it needs to be expanded any further.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's pretty complete.
Right.
Should we adopt it then? I mean,
I move that
Okay,
we
go forward.
accept section 9, duties of the mayor as written.
Second.
may we have a roll call? Oh, I'm sorry, any discussion? May we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Dr. Bugavalis?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Mr. Colianis?
Yes.
Dr. Root?
Yes. Okay, section 10?
I thought you said we were gonna stop at 9.
No, this one's just as quick,
Nightmare.
this one will be just as fast.
Yes, I think, well, that's why I figured we can get through 10, we're good.
Okay.
I
I missed that.
Before we vote real quick on this one, I'm confused. The board has more than one vice mayor now.
No.
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 Have one
One
vice
at a
mayor at a
time.
time.
But they're rotating through.
Should we add that in case they want to get really creative with it, or? No, I'm
No.
kidding, I'm kidding.
I wouldn't recommend that.
No,
No, I mean, the Board of Commissioners.
let them duke it out.
That's the truth.
They have designated one of its members as vice mayor,
Yes.
but then they have also designated when that is going to change, so it
Yes.
rotates through
Yeah.
everybody. So,
Yeah. It was rather awkward.
what was that?
I said it was rather awkward, I thought.
Should there be any selection criteria?
No.
They're
I
all-
think, I think
think
at
that's
some
their
point, you need to
purview.
let them operate.
Let
as
them
their
duke
own-
it out and.
Okay,
and
duke
go-
it out.
Yeah,
They're all
and
supposed
that's
to be
what they did.
qualified.
They duked it out, and, you know,
So,
everybody gets a piece of the pie.
so I make a motion that we approve section 10 as is.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Bugavalis?
Yes.
Ms. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Kuskudis?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Mr. Colianis?
Yes.
Dr. Root?
Yes. Let's see what else we got here. I think that's pretty much. Okay, so next meeting's May 6th. Let's see, review and discussion charter sec, okay, we did that. Next meeting is May 6th, 2024. Do we have any public comments? Mayor Protos, you are
Yes,
the public today.
Anita Prose. Very productive meeting today. I have to agree with Joan Jennings on the art committee. I think an ordinance as to who can put in an application and their background, because that's what I've gone to the city commission many, many Tuesdays to ask about the historic preservation, because we're losing a lot of our historic in this city. To let someone put a tin shed to put their truck under next to a beautiful home on the bayou that's one of the historic homes is wrong. To be put on a board because you read historic novels, that doesn't qualify. And if you go and read the applications to see the qualifications of some of them, it doesn't apply. I've asked the city to make sure that they belong to organizations in Tallahassee for historic preservation, get the magazines, read the letters, read the newsletters that come out. they just look at, well, it's because it's me, I'm sure. They just look at me like I don't know what I'm talking about. But our city is going down, and you can't put everything in the charter, but we need to get very active and make it strong again, because we're getting deterioration in Tarpon. It's here. They don't even enforce the ordinances in the sponge docks. It's filthy, it looks like a carnival. So we need to do something very strong, where as far as we can go in the charter, and then let's start going and asking for these ordinances, because we're spending a lot of money, and it needs to get beautiful again, and the Historic Preservation and the Art Committee shouldn't have to fight on these committees, but you got to have qualified people. And for people to serve on the board, they must live in this city, flush their toilets in this city, sleep in this city, and pay their taxes here and their water bill. If you need to bring someone in as a specialty, bring them in for advice, but let's not start diluting our boards.
Thank you for your comments.
Chairman Root, I think it shows real love for the city when you come to this meeting on your birthday.
Paul?
Well, like they called me a bitch, I said, yeah, I'm a bitch for the city.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Let's take a minute for staff comments.
No, no comment.
No comments?
Chicken.
No comments.
Good work.
Hear that, my board? Good work.
Done good, kid.
All right, so let's now go to board comments. Mr. Terrapini?
It was a good meeting.
I thought so too. I agree with you on that. We might not agree on everything, but let's embrace what we agree on, right?
I'll still be your friend.
That's great.
Very, like I said, very good meeting, good input. I like the different points of view, and I like to argue about them.
Yeah, no, well, we will move forward, but right now we're stirring the pot and putting the spices in, so I think it's really good. Thank you.
This is a strong board, I can tell you guys that. It's, I like what we did today. Nobody's unhappy with anybody else, but everybody's doing this job, and that's what we came for.
I agree.
I think very civilized discourse, sense of collegiality or, and, yeah, I think we were very productive today. It's only our really first substantive meeting.
Everything's very positive. I'm very happy with how it's going.
Well, I think the Board of Commissioners gave us a great board to work with, and I look forward to working with you in the weeks to come. And hopefully I'll get my dates right next time. So, thank you for pointing that out. I am a fallible human being, but I don't like to admit it all the time. Thank you very much. This concludes the meeting. We are adjourned at 4:42 p.m.